I just have to share. Yeah, I just ask them.
Oh, well. There's always been change. We've never been through a tie vote at all. Definitely reminds me of that one. My memory is. When was some of that stuff, I'm glad I don't.
I was gonna say, I'm glad that you picked the right things to do.
Yeah.
In Virginia, it said it's here some duration, so.
I don't know either.
Get back here. Get ready to jump up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the July 20 edition of the Lexington City Council. Thank you all for being here, and I hope council had a good respite for July 4th and the July 6th meeting that was canceled. And but glad to have everyone assembled and do the work of the city this evening. First item on the agenda, if you all will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. The next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes or modifications to the agenda. Unless there's an objection, we will approve the agenda as presented. It stands approved. Next item, presentations. Excited to have presentations from a couple of organizations in the city or in our community. First is Rockbridge Area Department of Social Services. Dinah, glad that you're here with us, and take it away.
Thank you for having me here this evening. I want to start out tonight talking about the public health emergency that the Virginia Department of Social Services declared ended in March for individuals that were receiving Medicaid through the Virginia Medicaid system.
Dinah, we record these, so yeah, if you could step up. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so for the last 3.5 years, for those of you who don't know, that individuals that were receiving Medicaid or Medicaid assistance from the Virginia Department of Social Services, we were not allowed to close those cases. But it didn't, based on their circumstances, it did not matter whether it was their income or if they had an increase in income or had received a job or anything like that. We were not allowed to close any of those Medicaids for 3.5 years. So in March, when the Virginia Department of Social Services declared an end to the public health emergency, we are now processing Medicaid based on policy. This has meant that some individuals have lost or will be losing their Medicaid as they complete the renewal process. The biggest impact thus far we see within the agency is the documentation not being completed because they have not been required to turn in the documentation for the last 3.5 years. So therefore, individuals are receiving their mailings and not processing it back to the agency itself. However, when our workers receive that and the Medicaid has been denied, they reach out to the individuals and individuals then turn in their renewals. And if they are eligible for the benefit and for the services, then they are able to complete that renewal and have retroactive back to the process date of when it was closed itself. So that's a great benefit that we have, is be able to make it retroactive back once the individuals, and we reach out to them to return the renewals in. And again, I think this is just an oversight of individuals not having had complete that documentation within the last 3.5 years itself to be able to do. So to give you some statistics on the eligibility and where we are as the department, the Rockbridge Area Department of Social Services currently has 7,876 cases of SNAP, Medicaid, and TANF. That is the whole Rockbridge Area Department of Social Services to include the 3 localities. How that impacts Lexington City. Lexington has 246 SNAP, 693 Medicaid, and 5 TANF cases active right now. Next, I'm going to update you on our foster care system. We currently have 26 children in foster care, with 3 of those being in Fostering Futures. For those of you that are not aware, the Fostering Futures program is children who have turned 18 and aged out of the foster care system. However, they have chosen to stay in that foster care system to receive the benefits of the stipend program, of basic maintenance payment, and also services to help them find apartments and things of that nature. They can stay in that program up until they're 21 years old. But they have to choose to do that. Some of that impact is they have to choose to work or be going to school. And the work requirement is 24 hours a week, or going to school, whether in a college or a community college setting itself, to be able to do. Of those children, we have 26 children currently in foster care. Of those 26 children, 2 of those are Lexington funded children. So the Virginia Department of Social Services has made some great changes over the past year, with one of those being kinship fictive kin care. And for those, I'll give you a brief description of what that program is now we can place children with individuals who are not blood kin, but have been a part of the child's life in some way, such as a teacher, counselor, neighbor, church member, etc. The placement has to agree to become a foster parent or a foster family. This entails background checks, home studies, and completing the PRIDE training, which is a 6-week course of which they have 6 months to complete. However, they can receive the basic maintenance payment that we provide for that child at the start of placement while they are going through that process itself. This allows local agencies to keep children within the community and in their school systems and with families they are familiar with. In turn, it allows families to receive compensation to help to support the children that they have taken in. So that's a wonderful program that the Virginia Department of Social Services has come up with over the last year, because that really keeps our children within the community setting itself. I'm proud to say we have our first kinship placement. It's a set of 4 siblings, and it's working out great. So that's been wonderful. I do want to mention a great accomplishment of this agency as well. We have completed 27 adoptions since March of 2020. So we gave those children the permanency that they deserve to be able to do. So how does this impact the department? As I'm sure a lot of you can relate, recruitment to fill vacancies have been very difficult. Not only has the state changed our recruitment process to a new HR system, which is challenging in itself, but finding qualified applicants have been very difficult throughout the agency in all departments. We currently have 7 vacant positions within the agency, which is an improvement, because I have been able to fill 3 of those starting in August, but we're not where I strive to be. And looking forward, I will look forward to the day that we can and will be fully staffed. So again, I thank you for allowing me here this evening to address you. Is there any questions I can answer?
Thank you, Donna. Members of council have any questions while you cogitate? 2 questions, Donna. One, you mentioned with the adoptions, I think it was, or not adoptions, but placements, that there are 2 Lexington funded.
That is correct.
What does that mean?
2 of those children are within from the Lexington locality.
Limits.
So you're funding those children. It's federal 4E program, or the CSA program funds those children.
Very good. And that was of 27 or 26?
We have 26 kids currently in care, and of those 26 kids, 2
Okay.
are Lexington.
From a structural standpoint, how have you managed post-COVID office versus remote? Because obviously it's a new world.
It absolutely is. And COVID did throw us in a telework process to be able to do. We actually are balancing that really well. We, along with other Virginia Department of Social Services agency, offer a telework option. That is something in our recruitment process that's really been a draw, especially for the younger generation, to be able to telework. Our policy is after you're fully trained and come off of probation, which we have a year probation, then you can choose your telework schedule that benefits you and your supervisor or the agency as well to be able to do. So I do have several employees that telework throughout the agency itself.
Okay. And how many employees do you have in your agency?
We have 38
38.
right now. Yes, that
Currently.
is full and part-time and contract salary.
And looking for 8 for anybody who's looking for a job.
Absolutely. I have benefit program specialist positions available out there. Those do not require a degree, and that is advertised. Family service specialists, I have in-home and CPS. They require a bachelor's degree in any field, and I'd be happy to interview you for that position. And then we also have a receptionist position available right now.
Very good. Very good. Members of council have any questions? Hearing none. Donna, thank you for being with us. Thanks for your work and support of those in our community that need the most support. And thank you. Please extend our appreciation to your team.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. And thanks for being here, Mike Gilmore. Thank you. Thank you. Grateful. Next item on the agenda, presentation from Lime Kiln Arts. Spencer McElroy, step on up. Thanks for being with us.
Mr. Alligood, been a while. Good to see you. Spencer McElroy, Executive Director of Lime Kiln. It's been a while since I've had the pleasure to come speak to you guys. And so thank you for that opportunity, and thank you for your support, in particular, the support you've given us with discretionary funds through the VCA matching community partnership grant. The $2,250 pledged by the city will turn into $4,500 to Lime Kiln, thanks to the VCA match. And the committed funds have allowed us to complete two important projects that have been multi-year projects. We've upgraded finally all of our incandescent lighting at Lime Kiln to LED lighting and made it safer through truss systems. I don't have to crawl up on a ladder and shimmy across the trees anymore to do that. So thank you for that. And having not been here to speak to you guys for a while, I wanted to give you a quick update as to what Lime Kiln's been doing over the past 10 years. About 11 years ago, a director from Lime Kiln stood in front of city council and was trying to raise $400,000 to keep Lime Kiln alive. The city did not give them any of those funds, and I'm not here to chastise you for that. In fact, it was a good thing that you didn't, because Lime Kiln shut down and we were able to breathe new life into it, and new board members, new staff, new energy. And over the past 10 years, I'm proud to report that it's been operating in the black every year for the first time in its history. We've sold close to 70,000 tickets over that period, close to 130,000 people on site through public and private events. And Lime Kiln has put just over $500,000 back into the site. Most of which has come from earned revenue that through ticket sales and other earned revenue. In fact, we're recognized recently by the VCA as having one of the highest earned revenue to unearned revenue ratios for nonprofits, which is great for you guys and the county as well, because it's a very low impact to the tax base. That being said, we put about $50,000 a year back into the site, and we couldn't do that without support from grants and donations. And we've been reinvesting that money every single year. So thank you for the support that the city gives us, and I hope you will continue. We've got some big capital projects planned for next year, and maybe I can come to the table and ask you guys to help us then, just planting a little seed for the future. And for those of you that don't know, our flagship program is the concert series. This year we'll do 13 shows, 13 concerts. We've sold 8,240 tickets to those shows. There's only 375 left of, the total 8,500. So if you don't have a ticket, let me know, I guess. There are a few left. The other big thing I wanted to mention, pretty consistently about 74% of the tickets sold come from outside of Rockbridge County, 25% from out of state. We haven't done an official economic impact report, tourism report, but we've done quite a bit of research and diligence on that, and we anticipate the economic impact locally to be between $1 million and $1.5 million a year. So it sort of has turned into an important tourism project, and certainly something that helps the city and the county, and hopefully something you guys will continue to support. Any questions?
Members of council have any questions? Nick?
What percentage of tickets sold did you say came from outside of Rockbridge County?
74%. And about a third of those are out of state.
My hillbilly cousins love to come to Lime Kiln every chance they get. So
We take anybody that wants to come.
clearly. Other members of council have any questions? On behalf of a grateful city and a grateful community, thank you for the work that you've done and the life that you've breathed into Lime Kiln and the great and amazing shows that take place there. Sorry, I don't get to schedule well enough to attend all of them, but very grateful for the work that you and your board, and please take our council's appreciation back to your board for all the work that they do in making things happen.
Thank you very much. And thanks to Chuck Smith, our board president at Lime Kiln, for all the work he's doing.
Indeed.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you.
I'd like to point out just one thing about Lime Kiln and its impact and its importance to the community. Spencer and Kiln are booking bands and entertainment that play venues that are 9,000 attendees, and we're booking, and we'll have, if we have 600, we're full, and you're getting an experience that you cannot replicate in any other venue. And I can't say that often enough, so I keep saying it. When you have groups coming through that play Red Rocks that are charging anywhere from $100 to $300 a ticket, and we're getting that a better experience for a tenth of the cost. And I like I said, I just want to keep saying that and saying that and saying that.
Sound like a very proud board chair.
Yes, sir.
Good
Thanks,
deal.
Chuck.
Excellent. Thank you again, Spencer and Chuck and all the folks, all the folks from Lime Kiln. Next item on the agenda is public hearings. First is a public hearing and consideration of requests from Perkins and Orson. And I'll call on Arnie to introduce this subject.
Good evening, everyone. This is a preliminary subdivision for the two properties at 111 Rebel Ridge Road and at 597 Ross Road. This is a two-part request. If you look at the location map at the bottom of your page, you will see the property that's outlined in green is the property for 111 Rebel Ridge Road. And you will notice first off that there are two parcels that make up that green outline. And the first request is to vacate that one little boundary, that short little boundary. So everything that's outlined in green is on one property and not on two parcels. So that's the first request. The second request I'll start with, if you come to the end of the cul-de-sac for Rebel Ridge Road, you'll notice that the driveway on the furthest left is not on the property that it serves. In other words, it's not in the green area, it's actually in the blue outline area. You can see that a little bit better on the next page on the photograph. That driveway on the left with the retaining wall and a portion of that walkway in front yard for 111 Rebel Ridge Road are actually not on the property at 111 Rebel Ridge Road. So the request is to move the boundary line over a little bit and gain a little bit of property from 597 Ross Road and give it to the property at 111. So 111 would get a little bit bigger, but then those things that are serving that property are actually on the same parcel. Next page, if you don't mind, you see that area that's in question outlined or in gray, but also with the blue striping. That is the portion that is requested to be given from the 597 Ross Road parcel over to 111 Rebel Ridge. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing and they do have a recommendation for approval, and that is unanimous. The staff similarly has a recommendation for approval. The minutes from the Planning Commission were provided in your packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have any questions? I'll just opine. It's always a treat when neighbors can get along and come to a conclusion on their own. And looks like a very sound conclusion. Thank you, Arnie. No questions from council at this time. I'd like to open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to speak to this issue. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this issue of the boundary line adjustment between 111 Rebel Ridge and 597 Ross Road? Not seeing anyone that wants to speak to this, I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:18 and ask for council's discussion.
I move to approve preliminary subdivision application PS 2023-03 for A, the adjustment of boundary lines between 111 Rebel Ridge Road, tax map number 21-1-20, and 597 Ross Road, tax map number 22-1-3. And B, the vacation of the boundary line between tax parcels 21-1-20 and 21-6-A in accordance with the boundary line adjustment plat for Christian Haskett and Maggie Shapiro Haskett, completed by Perkins and Orison as submitted by the applicant.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Ms. Strawn?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you to all involved. Thank you to Perkins and Orison for making a fine outline and boundary adjustment. Next item on the agenda is public hearing, consideration of a lease at Brubaker Field with the Friends of Rockbridge Swimming. And I'd like to call on the city attorney for an introduction of this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. House and I are both going to comment briefly on it. I did just want to alert council that the process for a long-term lease of public property is very similar to the franchise process that you undergo when you grant a franchise to a cable company or some other user of public rights of way. The process requires that we advertise and receive bids from potential competitors, if you will, for the long-term lease. We have run an ad soliciting bids. I spoke with Janie beforehand, and we did not receive any bids other than the application from Friends of Rockbridge Swimming, which started the process. Of course, if there was anyone here this evening with a bid, they would be entitled to bring it forth and present the bid this evening. Going forth into the public hearing, one of the purposes of the public hearing is to flesh out any details of any bids you may receive or conduct any other type of investigation concerning the bids, if there were any that you received. Having received no bids and assuming that there are none forthcoming from the floor, you would just proceed with your public hearing on the application from Friends of Rockbridge Swimming. Just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the process and confirm that we had not received any bids, and again, invite anybody from the public to present such a bid if they were so inclined.
Thank you, sir. The members of council have any questions on that overview? Very good. Jim, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are all well aware, of course, that Friends of Rockbridge Swimming have operated the indoor pool or the bubble pool here in our community for a number of years. As noted, the lease is coming, will expire in summer of 2024 in June. And they'd like to, for their planning purposes and for continuity, be able to be assured that they will have a lease for more than one more year. So they've asked that this lease be renewed. And I think we, again, all probably understand that this is not problematic for the city. There's not any issues from an operational standpoint or for conflicts with other uses in Brubaker Park that would create any difficulty, in regard to operating the pool or continuing to operate the pool. So, it does serve the entire community. It provides a lot of recreational opportunities that otherwise would not be available. There are groups that go in there and use the pool on a regular basis. And sometimes there's a discount. Most of the time, I guess they do pay, but nonetheless, individually and groups can use the pool. The one item I would note is we have a public hearing scheduled, and I had recommended that we approve or council approve this lease. However, the board of Friends of Rockbridge Swimming apparently reviewed this again a day or two ago, and Ms. Ayers called me up today and said she'd like to withhold the lease for approval. And so we'll go ahead and, if it's the pleasure of the mayor and city council, have the public hearing and then bring back the lease at another time for approval.
And if I may, real quick, Jim mentioned the term of the lease. It is effectively a 10-year lease, which is the long-term nature of the lease, which forces us into the process.
Mr. Betts.
There is an exhibit B referenced in the lease, and I didn't see an exhibit B.
Those properties or those, properties or items that they own are in another lease. We're going back and forth with this. So yes, we do have to attach that list.
Okay.
We've gone over that, Ms. Ayers and I, and it's no problem. It just wasn't attached. You'll see
And
that.
then I guess it's fine. When we have the actual lease that is being signed and executed, just in the first paragraph to spell Brubaker correctly.
Okay.
It's spelled with a U instead of a EW.
Mhm.
And also, clarification, the parking spots that are within their lease that they maintain. Just if someone parks there that the aquatic center doesn't want there, should the aquatic center, it is on them to enforce their own parking, or are they to call the city or the police to enforce someone parking on their property that they're leasing from the city?
Since it's a park, I've not had this come up as an issue, but I would suspect or would suggest that we should be
That the city of
yes.
Okay. I know that actually does happen frequently, and I just would like, I think it should be spelled out for the leaser and the city, for that Lexington Police knows that they're enforcing people parking on their property. I think that should be spelled out if that is what you think should happen, just because I know it's,
premises.
that's what I thought.
So they would be responsible for at least picking up the phone.
That-
Whether they call us
right.
or the towing company, that's something that can be worked out, sir.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was police department's responsibility to deal with a car parked on leased property. And I know it's been an issue. That's why I'm bringing it up. And this is a great time when we're executing the lease, because it's an ongoing issue.
Ms. Ayers mentioned that today as well, parking, and would like to see some signage there as well to direct people across to the middle school. She suggested that be overflow parking. And quite often, of course, the reason you have competition for parking is because of other activities in Brubaker Park. And she's worked with Raro to try and have conversations about, scheduling events at other times, which I'm not sure is very feasible, but she nonetheless would like to just have everyone aware that there's limited parking, and that's for the indoor pool.
Something signage would take care of, and hopefully instead of calling the police, folks can navigate that and get to a happy place. Very good. With those comments, any other questions from council? Hearing none, I'd like to open the public hearing for consideration of a lease in Brubaker Field and Park with the Friends of Rockbridge Swimming. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak to this issue this evening? Hearing none, at 7:26, I'd like to close the public hearing. And as you heard from the city manager, do not anticipate council's consideration, and we will maintain this on the agenda for our next meeting on August 3rd in hopes of having a lease that both parties are happy with and we can have for your consideration in full review. Ms. Strawn.
Is this one of these situations where we want to continue the public hearing so that we don't have to re-advertise?
Use your microphone there so folks at home can hear you.
You can, but you don't need to. There's the applications have been received, the bids have been opened, and no one has responded. So we can make some minor adjustments to the lease and then present the ordinance at a subsequent meeting.
Okay,
Without an additional public
Without an
hearing.
additional public comment.
great. Thank you.
Great question. And he had addressed that prior to the meeting. So
And one question, just the lease in number 4 talks about that we will charge them for water and sewer on the same terms as we charge resident customers. Is that customary for a facility like that to get a rate that is similar to what a resident is charged? Or is that, just for my own information, is that a lesser rate than are they considered a heavy user the way that our structure is?
I've not had that question posed to me. I don't believe they would be a heavy user.
Okay,
And of course, I in my experience, those things are all over the board, is how you charge a facility of that nature, if you charge it at all. So.
okay, thanks.
yeah, I'd make the observation, a great question. When they're filling the pool, I don't know if it's a separate circumstance, but just the use of the locker rooms, I think is the general bill that they're having to deal with. But I don't think that they have to fill it or refill it on a frequent basis.
I understood. I
But,
mean, it's
yeah.
definitely based on usage, and that was just a question if that was, so no problem.
Good eye. Next item is consideration of minutes. Your June 15 city council meeting minutes were included in Unless there are any changes or modifications, we will accept those as presented. Hearing no objections or changes, we will let those be approved as presented. Next items is citizens' remarks and comments, and we invite members of the community to come and address city council with thoughts and concerns and opportunities. And tonight is no different. We're glad for folks. Had two folks that have signed up that I'll call on first. Anyone else who would like to address council, you'll have that opportunity. But tag teaming this evening are Brianna Hines and Philip Taylor. As they come, Philip is a longtime friend who made some koozies that I'll share with council. I'll distribute those. You can pick your favorite color as you go down the line, but quite the exquisite knitter. So Philip and Brianna, welcome.
Hello. I'm not that tall, sorry. I come to you, we come to you today to help beautify Lexington. Philip has been here for quite some time. I am brand new to Lexington, not even a year under my belt yet. Now I'm from the mountains, but I ran away as soon as I got to the age where I was legally allowed to, and I moved to Virginia Beach. And now I'm older, much wiser, and I'm so happy to be back in the mountains. Now, what we do every day, my job is I work for a company called Sunny Haven Residential Services. And what they do, they are not run by the state, but they, for lack of better words, piggyback off of group homes that are meant for mentally disabled or intellectually disabled adults 18 and over that live within Lexington and surrounding cities. So Rafine, we go to Natural Bridge, Buena Vista, you name it. If they need help and they need to get out, we're there to be there for them. A specific part of Sunny Haven is where I come into play. I work for community engagement. And now most of the times when you think of individuals such as Philip and his friends and my friends, I don't know how to word this appropriately, I'm sorry. We don't want them to just be sitting in a group home, you know, watching TV, twiddling their thumbs. And as much as I know Philip loves to crochet, I know that is not what he wants to do all day long. So the community engagement program, it is my job to pick them up in the mornings. We volunteer at the Aurora Food Pantry, bagging diapers for mothers and their babies. We fill spices for people that can't afford the ones at Walmart. Philip, just on his own, before any of this started, has been donating out of the goodness of his heart things that he crochets to hospice, to librarians, we baked goods for firefighters, police officers. Our whole job is to do fulfilling things every day to make a difference, to bring smiles to their faces and give them a fulfilling life just like anybody else in this world deserves. My heart lies with these guys. They have become very, very near and dear to me in the 4-ish months that I've been working for Sunny Haven. Philip's big focus is he really wants to make a difference. He wants to make an impact on people's lives. He wants to bring smiles to your faces, hence the colorful koozies and the lei that you have received tonight. We like to lunch at places that are very pretty. The double-decker pavilion in Glenmore is our #1 choice because that view, can't beat it. We like to lunch at Jordan's Point, sometimes by the water. Philip does his prayer circles around the gravel walkway. We love it there. And more recently, we have discovered Hopkins Green Fountain Garden. We adore that place. It's perfect. It's shady if you want shade. There's a big old hole in the middle. So if you want sun, it's there too. There's a beautiful gondola with vines covering picnic tables. The aesthetic is just so pleasing. But then you look a little to the right and the garden's namesake, the Hopkins Green Fountain, looks kind of like somebody took a baseball bat to it, to be honest. It's completely off center. The decorative centerpiece is completely missing. It's misshapen. The electrical is gone. If there was electrical, something was hooked up back there, gone. And we just don't think it's being utilized to its full potential. We love Lexington. We love the people in Lexington. We love the friends we make every day. And we're sad that we don't see more people in Hopkins Green because of all the wonderful things that can be done there. Yoga, music. You can read your Bible. You can read, Soup for the Soul books if you want. Anything. And it's sad that it's tucked away in a little corner and just have been neglected. We would like the opportunity to raise the money for Lexington to have it replaced. We want to take the crafts that Philip and I create and some other members of the group home. Theirs is more art, ours is more sewing and knitting and such. We would like to sell our goods and we would like to advertise in the businesses that we frequent weekly. And just give it a much better, viewpoint. It's untapped potential right there. And we just want to help. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
The Hopkins Green, it's one of my favorite places. And when I first come here, I saw that and it's so beautiful and I'm just excited to be able to raise money for the fountain and to give something to the city here for their services and all that they do.
And because this is a project, I know numbers are a thing. I will be forward with you. Math was never my thing. But so far what's today, Thursday? In the 6 days that we have been vocally expressing it, just purely out of excitement, we have already gained $30 in donations in hand. And I also have started a GoFundMe page in honor of Hopkins Green Fountain Garden in hopes that we can make it a good namesake, give it a refresher, learn the history behind it, because we don't want to take away from that at all. We just want to make it better.
Yeah.
And that is all. Any questions?
Members of council have any questions? I would just say thank you for your enthusiasm and spirit. I know, Philip, we worked on the Peace Wave together, which is a beautiful part of Brubaker Park and Brubaker Complex. And the work that you all are doing, I corresponded with Brianna and I talked to the city manager. He's gone by and looked at the fountain and has done a little bit of research. We don't have exactly a plan in place currently, but he will be our point of contact to work with you to let you know what needs to be done to upgrade that and enhance, if you will, Hopkins Green and make it an even more enjoyable place. But we are eternally grateful for your spirit, your kindness, for being with us this evening, sharing your talents and helping to make our world a better place. So thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good work. And as you have other ideas, as you meander at Jordan's point, we had a meeting at 6 o'clock to talk about that park and things that we can do to enhance and the experiences there and make them more enjoyable and spread more smiles throughout our community. So
Be careful what you wish for. I have a list.
I know Philip's enthusiasm and tenacity, so it's well placed.
We're forced to be reckoned with, he and I.
Indeed, indeed.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for being with us. Have a great night. Is there anyone else who would like to address council this evening on matters on or not on the agenda? Not hearing anyone. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and I would ask for council's consideration.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Strong.
Second.
Have a motion and a second and a roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Strong.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Look forward to the event in January. It's 90 degrees outside. Hard to think about freezing temperatures and things of that nature. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Consideration of the Virginia Horse Center's request to extend the 1% discretionary lodging tax. Because of a conflict of interest with my employer, Cornerstone Bank, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Mayor Alexander and step off the dais. Thank you, Ms. Alexander.
Thank you, sir. I think the first thing we should do is ask the city manager to comment as you wish in regard to the backstory of this and what we're voting on this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Vice Chairman, Chairperson. We're all familiar with this issue. It's been before us. The community's discussed it over a number of months. Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors has also considered this and obviously approved it. So the facts and the details of it are pretty well known. There is a loan that the Horse Center has, as the mayor noted, with Cornerstone Bank. And at some point in time, in about 2014, both the city and the county agreed to support the debt service on this loan with an additional 1% lodging tax. We've been doing that for a number of years, both parties, and the authorization for this 1% has been renewed from time to time. And at this point in time, the Horse Center is now before City Council to ask for another renewal of this 1%. As many of you have observed, and if people could readily see, most recently, the revenues from the 1% and 2% exceed the debt service, the annual debt service that's required. There's been some comments that that money could be used for other purposes, which is partially true. The 1%, but really $61,000 in our case today, could be used for other purposes. The 2%, however, cannot be used for any other purpose. It was authorized specifically by the General Assembly for Rockbridge County and the city of Lexington to have an additional 2% lodging tax for the sole purpose of repaying that USDA debt that the state walked away from some years ago. So we could indeed, if you will, take that 1% and use it for something else, but not the 2%. Ultimately, what will happen, I believe, is as that funding continues to build, at some point in time, it'll be used against the remaining debt on the out years of that tax, and tax would then go away.
What happens annually, since right now, the 2%, as you explained, from the county, they're contributing about $600,000 and the city is contributing about $200,000. So that's $800,000 and we owe annually until 2047, roughly $5,000. So what is happening right now with the excess 195? Where is that held?
The city actually holds that,
Okay.
and it does accrue interest, and that's also held then for the Horse Center.
The interest
The debt.
accrued,
Yes.
the interest accrued is for the Horse Center?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that was the purpose of the tax, and
Understood.
we interpret that to mean anything that accrues from that as well.
Understood.
So, and up until recently, there really hasn't been a lot of money, but now our lodging
Right.
tax
In
is really
2014, when we enacted the $61,000, it was actually because the money from the original 2% was not covering the $605,000 that was owed. So we wanted to make sure that we were covering what our obligation. And so that's where it kind of the impetus for the additional 1% started.
So at this point in time, I do recommend that we go ahead, City Council does go ahead and renew this 1%. I do note that if you've read the briefing, I'm sure you all have, that I do recommend, though, it's only until the debt is retired. There is additional revenue at this juncture provided by the state from some of the gambling funds that are collected through Rosie's, I believe it is. And that may or may not continue, but the whole conversation about capital improvements, I think, is a separate issue. And if 2 years or 4 years from now that debt is retired, then the Horse Center should have a conversation with City Council and make the case then that there are capital improvements that need to be funded, and that 1% could be a vehicle for that. I don't believe that there's any doubt that there's significant capital projects that need to be conducted there, that as a very important asset in our community, we want to see it very well maintained. There's a lot of visitors come from all over the United States, and the last thing we'd want, either the county or the city, is for them to go home and say, wow, that place is, not attractive, not the place we'd recommend you go to visit. They won't know if it's in the city or the county when they visit here. So we want to make sure that we have a very good impression. So I don't believe it today. I would recommend it be approved for the entire period of time requested by the Horse Center, but only for the period of time it takes to retire that debt. So that's my recommendation. Of course, you will need to have a public hearing, and I believe the mayor may have mentioned, and if he did not, and my memory isn't always that clear. Unfortunately, Ms. Thomas and Mr. Petty are not in town in August or September when we hold a meeting. So they would probably like to have the opportunity to be at that meeting, and thus we would delay it until the October 5th meeting. I hate to bring something up that we've already been sitting on for months and then sit on it for a couple more months, but they just, I guess, discovered in their scheduling earlier today that they just, neither of them could be present. So that's what I have, Ms. Vice Mayor.
Council members, do you have any other questions for the city manager?
So with your suggestion to renew it until the debt is retired.
Yes.
Does that take into account if they restructure the debt? How would that be dealt with? And since the county's 1% is roughly $300,000, and ours would be $61,000, how does that compare? I mean, how do you see that playing out with your suggestion? I mean, it's almost, one could almost think that our $61,000 isn't necessary if they were to restructure the debt, put it out 5 more years until 2029, lower the annual payment to roughly 180 a year until 2029, and the county is contributing 300. There's a delta there to the good 120,000 a year. What would our 61 be necessary for?
Well, our commitment was to retire the debt.
Correct.
So this is the commitment we made, or a similar city council made some years ago. And I did say until the debt is retired, or 2029 at the whichever is earliest. So it would last no longer than 2029. Now, whether or not they could, if you will, I think I hear maybe what you're saying is they could use the county debt or the county funding to pay off the debt, and then, or vice versa, use our funding to pay off the debt and then use the counties for something else.
I really like your suggestion. I just want to understand how it might play out. Because right now a balloon payment is due in 2026. And if that is our goal, to pay off the balloon payment in 2026, us extending our obligation for 2 years beyond 2024, $61,000 for 2 years, that's $122,000. Plus the excess from the payments that they're receiving now, when they owe about 180 a year, and they're getting on this additional 1%, they're getting about 361. I love your suggestion. I just want to understand the mechanics on how fast that balloon payment would be paid off. Potentially in 2025, they would have enough funds to pay off that balloon payment in 2026. Am I right?
No, I may not have been clear. I'm not suggesting they would pay off the balloon
So
loan.
you're suggesting that they will restructure,
Yes,
and we could be in this for,
to 2029,
yeah,
whichever is earliest. If they had the funds to pay off the debt before then we would not participate any longer with that 1%. Now, I one of the things I thought I may have heard you say is that, potentially they could, they'll go to the county and say, well, you applied, or you, when we applied, you approved use of your funding for both debt and capital. And, where's the P under the shell? They're using the county money for capital improvements, and they're using the city money for debt, so that we don't pay it off until 2029.
So
I don't know if that was the case, but it's
I'm just,
creative
I really like your suggestion. I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of it, just so that we do right by the Horse Center. They're receiving 1.2 million a year, roughly. I think it was in an article, 88,000 a month from the Churchill Downs Virginia Racing Commission funding. Hopefully that, continues, obviously. But by the end of this 2-year budget cycle, do you think you'll have received over $2 million from the Virginia Racing Commission funds that they about 2 million? And of course, the projections from the Virginia Racing Commission are that the 1.2 that the 2 million or 1 million a year could grow to 2 million a year once that Dumfries facility comes on, the one in Emporia is finished. I mean, these Rosie's facilities are popping up. And so just trying to do right by, with our capital projects that we have, and also, of course, pay our obligation to the horse center.
Well, my expectation is that both the county and city 1% would be used to pay off the debt as quickly as possible. And if our economy is still good in a year and a half, it won't take that long. Hopefully we don't see that kind of rough economy that we've experienced from time to time that may reduce earnings for our lodging, but that's my expectation.
So our 1% is restricted exclusively to debt service.
It was written and approved, so
I'm looking at what's in front of me right now, this extension.
yes, that
Would go.
I've proposed and recommend it would be exclusively for debt service, no capital.
Right. So the 300,000, the 1% the county is contributing, is that restricted as well to debt service? Or that's just
No.
open season?
I wouldn't call it necessarily open season,
Oh.
but it was provided so that they can address capital needs. So should they choose to.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
I think the horse center is a valuable resource to our community. I think, it brings a lot of tourism in here. And I think that, that should be considered when making a decision.
I'm not trying to discount the importance of the horse center for the region.
I understand. I'm just making a comment. I'm not trying to.
Yeah. Believe me, the number of people it primarily and secondarily employs, the impact that the horse center has is incredible. And I don't by any means want to see it degrade. I want to make sure we're doing the best thing with the funding we have available to the horse center and to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Do we know if in the budget, not the current state, 2-year state budget, but the previous budget, when they set this up, the possibility of this up, they said at that time that the state could appoint people to the Virginia Horse Center Foundation board. Has the state appointed anyone to the board?
So, excuse me a second, would you like to come up so that
That was in the legislation or in that 2022 budget, the budget ending in.
And I'm not sure which year that was, but when the Virginia, the quasi board split and we became a foundation.
Yeah, I do not believe that with this, the Rosie's money, they have any right to appoint anybody to our board because that money doesn't really go through the state. It's coming directly from Churchill Downs.
Understood.
There was originally when there were two boards. The state owned the horse center and there was a state oriented board there. There was a nonprofit that ran the horse center. I want to say in 2008, no, in 2000, let's be about 2008, they put the two together. There was an MOU that did allow state representation on the board. That MOU was terminated in about 2015, 2016. And as of that date, the state no longer has any ability to appoint somebody to the board. Now, that does not say that we always welcome new people to the board, but by a legal right, I don't believe the state has any. The state really does not have any influence over what we're doing. We're just getting the Rosie's money directly from Churchill Downs.
Okay. In the previous budget, just for what it's worth, the language is completely in there that they have the right to appoint people to your
Okay.
board. But anyway, the reason I was asking that was how are we putting ourselves in a good position to continue the money from Rosie's, the money from the Virginia Racing Commission that we didn't even know about 24 months ago. And now we're going to yield $2 million, which is phenomenal. Set aside what we're doing here. We just want what's best for the horse center. That $2 million goes a long way. Are we positioning ourselves really well to continue to receive that money?
What that depends on is legislative support. Right now, we have good legislative support all the way to the governor's office. So even though it's only guaranteed for 2 years, our hope is that it will continue.
Okay. It's definitely our hope. I just want to know we're positioning ourselves really
And
well.
what that money, that basically the restriction on that money is, we are to use it to retain and attract new tourism to the horse center.
Yeah.
Or events.
But I thank you for being
Okay.
here and for being able to answer our questions. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, just to clarify, so October 5th is when we will take up this issue again. Is that correct?
Right.
If council agrees to a public hearing on that date.
And one comment. I agree with what city manager said about the Lexington obligation to put this money towards the horse center debt. And that's our obligation. We need to fulfill what we set out initially to do. And we don't have to commit to go beyond that at this point, but we need to fulfill what we said we were going to do from the outset. And that's retire that debt.
Well, it's not only obligation from the original agreement. The horse center is bringing more business to our downtown. So it's important that we continue to support in some way. So I think this is the way to go. So I guess the next thing we need to do is decide whether we're going to have that public hearing, and we'll need a motion for that.
I move that we revisit this issue with a public hearing on October 5th.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to make this decision, well, excuse me, to have this public hearing on October 5th. Is there any discussion? Further discussion? Being no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. Ms. Strong,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Sigler.
Aye.
Mr. Beck.
Aye.
And Mr. Alligator.
Aye.
And I vote aye, and it is unanimous that we will now have scheduled a public hearing for October 5th to amend the ordinance in place that authorizes the use of these funds for debt service by the horse center. Yeah, Jenny? Mr. Mayor, you can come back and take over.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander, and thank you, council and staff. Next item on the agenda, update on 201 North Randolph Street. Mr. City Manager.
As you all are aware, we do have an action against 201 Randolph Street, and there's been no response from the owners at this time. That 60-day period that they were to respond by is over next week. And so I do intend to be calling the Clarks up and just give them a friendly reminder that we'd like to hear from them, that they are required to provide some type of a framework as to what they plan to do with the property. And I've not heard that, and neither they or us really want to go down that road without having a response. So that's my plan at this point, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Next on the agenda, reports and communications, Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Mr. Smith.
Blue Ridge Resource Authority meets Monday at 4:30. Preliminarily, I'd like to report that the authority and the landfill are running extremely well, beyond expectations, despite the fact of leachate overcosts. So we're in good shape.
We had a big tarp to put over the landfill and not have leachate. We'd have lower tipping fees, to be sure. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Main Street, Lexington, Mr. Smith.
Main Street Lexington is planning a ribbon cutting for the Gateway Triangle Garden at the northern end of town in mid-September. Hopefully we'll have a representative from Plant America in Springfield, Illinois, who gave us a grant for the ground cover. Held annual board meeting, set goals earlier this month for the fiscal year. And I guess Rebecca will plan to report the results of that at our meeting next month. Questions?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Planning Commission, Ms. Strong.
Sure. Planning Commission met last week on Thursday, July 13th. The city attorney explained his recommendation regarding conflicts of interest for the WNL site plan. His conclusion was that members of the Planning Commission with a personal interest in WNL should not participate in the site plan review. And I imagine if council hasn't already received that memo, will receive that memo and an update from the city attorney. An application for approval of a certificate of appropriateness for construction of the Williams School expansion building at 216 West Washington Street was unanimously approved by a vote of 3-0 by the Planning Commission, as was the approval of the site plan for the building. This will come before council at our next meeting. An application by Max Mark Homes LLC and Weatherburn Holdings LLC to amend the planned unit development for the Weatherburn subdivision located at the intersection of Thornhill Road and Chamberlain Loop, and a preliminary subdivision plat, which is a boundary line adjustment and boundary line vacation, to vacate 23 Chamberlain Loop and to adjust the boundary lines for 21 and 25 Chamberlain Loop and the adjacent open space, was presented to the Planning Commission. Both items were unanimously approved 6-0. Chairman Blake Schuster and Commissioner Matt Tuckler will roll off the Planning Commission at the end of the month when their terms expire. Blake served a 4-year term and Matt served 2 terms for a total of 8 years. And thank you to Blake and Matt for their dedication and contributions to the commission and the city. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Strawn. Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Betts.
Yes, I have a couple comments. One was the Freedom Food Festival on July 3rd was a great event. Approximately 3,200 people were in attendance, and it was a well-organized, well-attended event. Additionally, tourism has requested, if possible, for us to help facilitate awareness for organizations that are holding events in Lexington about tourism's ability to increase awareness about their event, such as by listing the event on the tourism website. And this is kind of as we do street closures, as events come to our attention, if there's some way to kind of coordinate with those organizations that I guess request things of council to let them know about the ability for tourism to promote their event. I don't know logistically how that would work, but I thought it was a good request and probably would help everybody out if there was some way by which we could do that, or let them know on the application that that's a possibility.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, currently the city manager, when he gets requests for a function in town, goes by the police chief, the fire chief, and public works. Just, are there any problems, issues, concerns, et cetera? And your suggestion or request would be to add tourism, and Gene would also be consulted to say, do you have any concerns, ideas, conflicts?
Sure.
Is that the concept you're speaking of?
Yes, if possible. And my understanding is the reason for that would be so the tourism knows about the event and could help promote the event.
Sure. I think that's easily accomplished unless anyone has any objections, asking the city manager to. Janie,
I've been talking.
pull your mic down there for us.
I've been talking with Holly about organizing something. So the two of us are putting our heads together to figure out the best path forward on how to keep them clued in. So
Thank you very much.
Even better. Great. Thank you, Nick.
It's a great point to bring tourism into the loop on things, when individuals have events, like maybe they're having a wedding or an anniversary party or something where they're bringing visitors from the outside, where you don't, personally feel like entertaining your visitors while they're here for a weekend. Tourism puts together little welcome packages, maps, et cetera, to show your guests all the great spots in Rockbridge County to help promote the city, the county, Buena Vista. So looping tourism in on things is always a good idea. So, yeah.
Definitely a net positive. Sounds like a personal experience there.
It is.
If you can figure out a way to make this work, you will have done something that no one else has been able to do, because we've been talking about this for years.
I will work on doing my best.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Betts. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
The Raro Board of Directors took a hiatus during the month of July. But unfortunately, I'd been talking about the backpacking, kind of the hiking program. We ended up not having enough signups. And so we did cancel that, which, hey, we've had a heck of a summer. I think the kayaking was a great program. And I think I've shared with you all that it was our executive director that was doing these additional programs during the summertime. And so it kind of gave him a week where there was nothing. I mean, there's always something, but that he kind of caught a week. There was some interest in the backpacking program, so I can see us bringing it back, advertising it more, involving kids and their parents, just trying to do something creatively. So I just wanted to pass that on and share it. Softball is going well, all of our summer programs, though, that we are doing are going overall very well, and can't believe it's almost fall. So if there are kids that want to sign up for our fall sports, please contact the Raro office so that we can, get them on the waiting list, because ultimately we're going to get them off the waiting list. But we do have to do that and follow our procedures. So that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Any questions? Thanks to the good work of Raro, and it's hard to believe we're in month 7, and at the start of the year, we never even thought about having a pavilion at Brubaker Field. So amazing the things that you all have been able to accomplish. So thank you. Next item on the agenda, threshold, Ms. Alexander.
Thank you. At the last threshold meeting, which was held last Wednesday, June 28th, we discussed the results of the survey we conducted regarding the underutilized properties to encourage owners to consider rental opportunities to increase the housing opportunities in Lexington. There were only 2 respondents out of 20 surveys sent out. So the planning department was able to guide one of the 2 in the right direction to resolve an issue with the heirs of their property. And the other person that responded was an owner who is out of town, but they are considering putting their property on the market. So on the heels of that discussion, the majority of the time of this meeting was spent presenting information about an opportunity the city has to obtain a planning grant to assess the existing conditions of all the dwelling units in the city by conducting a wind chill survey, which is an observation of all housing units within the city limits, and prioritizing areas with particular moderate to poor housing conditions. We would then have factual data from experts who conduct this type of survey to justify any future investments that we could make with our own current housing stock, while simultaneously seeing the future increase of new housing stock in the community by way of Spotswood and possibly VDOT. So after a lengthy discussion of how the grant process will work, the time frame, et cetera, in conjunction with the timing of the full housing study that we'll have the results of next spring, Threshold did vote to pursue the grant with the assistance of the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission. And Nick will provide some additional information.
Sure. So I believe that we're projected to have a $1.7 million surplus. And it'd be great if we could allocate some of that funding, to keep houses in good condition. I think part of, affordable housing is making sure our current stock of housing stays in good enough condition for folks to live in, and that we have good housing options for people here in the city of Lexington. And I know that $1.7 million surplus will have competing things that we can use for, and should also consider like sidewalks, the Jordan's Point Park plan, cemeteries, streets. But I think if we can find some portion of this funding to set aside for housing in a future discussion that council could have more formally later, I think that would be a great thing that we could do.
So to conclude our portion of the report, at this time, we would like to turn the topic over to Shadri Sands, who is our threshold chairperson. And he's going to talk about more detail in regard to that grant, the overall mission of the project, and Threshold's role in the process.
Hello all. Thank you all for having me tonight. This is my first time coming here. So it's very exciting. I'm also very excited to actually have something juicy that Threshold's doing, because it's been a little while where we've got to kind of bounce around figuring out what to work on. So yes, I think both council members spoke pretty well about what the ultimate goal is for this. Essentially, Threshold would work alongside with the city and also the PDC to kind of put together a competitive grant to get I always get the acronyms wrong, the CDBG grant, just for to help fund this survey. Basically, this survey would look through every single property here in Lexington and kind of assess what the needs are of our current housing stock. You know, when we talk about affordable housing, it's easy to kind of get focused and lost in new builds, but maintaining our current housing and making sure that those are still livable and people are living with roofs and all the proper stuff they need, that's very important too. So that's kind of the goal of this with the survey. So we would work with, like I said, the city and PDC to kind of be the three-prong to guide this grant through. Kind of our timeline that we were thinking is this month, July, we'd look to schedule a public meeting that would be necessary to get the grant. That public meeting would probably fall into line with our August threshold meeting, so we wouldn't really have to adjust things for that. We would be able to host that. Then we'd also start gathering letters of support and kind of working on the draft answers for the grant. Then in August, we'll hold the public meeting, and with those comments, kind of complete the grant and submit that. Then probably by October, November is when we'd expect to hear from that. If we did get it or not. As soon as we did get that, we'd like to put out the RFP for the experts who would actually conduct the survey. Then November, December, that's when we kind of expect to select them and have them we'd hold one more town hall meeting, again with Threshold, to gather input. And then we'd probably start scheduling when the windshield survey would actually take place. Ultimately, our goal would be to wrap up in early 2024, probably deadline of April 2024. Any questions so far?
The size of the grant, did you mention that? I wasn't.
So these grants are up to $50,000, I believe, but I believe that the surveys that we've seen have been between 10 and 15,000. So that's all we'd expect for that.
I think we're going to ask for the entire 50 that this first go around.
Okay, perfect.
And those funds would be able to do the assessment for our community?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And then with that report, we could look, and as Councilman Betts said, we would look and see what we should focus on for this kind of pilot, with some of the excess funds. So if roofs come out, or that's the primary function, or, whatever else it may be, that would give us the information that we really be able to have the data back to say to the community, hey, we did a survey, we saw all this, this is what we want to ultimately go with.
And I guess long-term, so are you looking at like partnering with Habitat with this data to carry out these projects, or is the city planning on making the repairs?
That's a good question. That kind of goes into our next steps. Sorry. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff we could do if the city wants to get involved. We can go that route. We could also apply it to further grants through the DHCD to renovate things. It just kind of depends on what the survey results say. So as I think we get more of those results, we kind of know what kind of things we're looking for. Are we trying to target one specific neighborhood? Are we trying to target one specific problem? Are we focused, so I think that we'll know more as we get that data in.
Okay.
I think the windshield survey will give us good data points to just have a better understanding kind of what's, how
The need is.
exactly.
It's better to have the factual data rather than to have us as basically laymen to go out and determine, what's in bad shape or whatever is in need of modification.
Yeah.
And when you're out, trying to obtain a planning grant or whatever, it's better to have that data to back you up so that it's more likely that you could win that award.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're starting in the right place and to
Mhm.
get that information and then we can work out what's next.
Yeah, it clearly is a building. I discern part of your question is what are the expectations from budgeting from the city
Mhm.
and how involved? I would say historically, city council has a position of, we want private homeowners to take care of their things and private businesses take care of their things. Not that, we're from the government, we're here to help you to a certain degree. So I think the assessment is a great first step. Two questions. One, do you have any sense from talking to the folks at PDC of the likelihood of success of this grant?
It seems to be pretty likely, especially if we get the letters of supports from Threshold from a couple of organizations. That seems to be pretty straightforward. And they're also experts in writing these kind of grants. So right, they'd be the ones in charge of that. We just help get them the right answers.
Terrific. And then the other question being, sometimes with grants, implementing them is more expensive and time consuming and painful than the financing you get. Do you have a sense from PDC that this is pretty low impact and that threshold, but being a city agency, how much support you would need from city staff?
I believe it's my understanding these kind of grants are very like singular focused. That's why they're kind of faster and easier to like one target or one goal. So I don't envision it being the most complicated or the most time consuming in that sense. So
great. Thank you. Members of council have any other questions? Shadri, thanks for your service to Threshold and to our community. And thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you all.
We look forward to supporting Threshold's efforts as we move forward. Anything else for Threshold?
That is it.
Thank you very much. And congratulations on getting some clarity and focus on things that have been bouncing around and ideas. It's terrific progress. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Algood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a couple of items. I had mentioned at a previous council meeting, the presentation about the preliminary engineering reports for MSA. And there's still forecasts to be done next month for a local meeting there. So cross your fingers that doesn't get shifted. The other item that I wanted to talk about is we've been talking about the need for the modernization of the MSA system. And I want to point out to you that last week we were on the edge where there was a lightning storm that caused overnight, unknown to the MSA staff, pumps turned on to pump river water into the MSA system. The folks came to work in the morning and it happened over a weekend and came to work and their holding ponds were literally overflowing. The water had gotten into the treatment side of the drinking water side. We were borderline having to issue a boiling water advisory. That's how close we came. Fortunately, the MSA staff was able to institute actions to lower the levels in their settlement basins, and luckily we didn't get over the top of that, but that's how close we came. And so the lightning strike, surely we were talking about it, the MSA staff and myself, surely there's been lightning strikes in the past after all these years, surely. But this particular one caused the pumps to turn off and nobody was there. And these are large capacity pumps that supply the whole plant there. And so it would have necessitated closing off the water system for a while. It was dangerously close. Just want to point that out. So again, I stress the need for modernizing that plant, and we have the engineering almost in place. All it's going to take is the money, and of course, scheduling the projects. But that's where we are. So we're still on the edge, and we luckily didn't have our water system shut down for both the city and the county. So cross your fingers and give your appreciation to the MSA staff for working all 24 hours until that system per day, that's several days to get that system back in place. So things are working fine again. Most of us never knew that had happened, but it did. And so again, living on the edge and didn't know it. And then,
And I may have missed this in your story. You may have said at the beginning. So did MSA personnel know there was a power outage at the plant during the evening hours?
no,
Okay. That seems like an easy alert to be able to get to your cell phone. You know, I
yes,
get it from my house, from my alarm system.
exactly.
Right. And
And
a low cost thing so that if there is a power outage, somebody should go check on things.
well, they knew there was a power outage, but they didn't know the pumps turned on.
Turned on. Oh,
The
okay. Oh,
pumps
yeah.
turned on unexpectedly
Yeah.
and overflowed their system with muddy river water.
What was the gap in between when that took place and when somebody found out, do you know?
I think it was about 10 to 12 hours.
And you mentioned 10 to 12 hours. So I guess
It was an overnight thing.
is an overnight, so there's not somebody always on staff. Like, would it be possible to have somebody be there in terms of staffing to make sure if something like that happened, that is like hire additional staff or people could work additional
Or instrumentation, control of the signals, the cell phone signal would be. I think the thing that you would look to do is to have some alarm that would go off for unexpected events. But in this particular case, it just shows you about how over all the years, things have been working, or in this case, the fluke occurrence of a lightning strike that happened to turn something on that shouldn't have been turned on. And so so investigating why that happened is part of the process to do the analysis, and then setting up an alarm system might be short term, but we're fixing to spend money to fix all of that as well. And certainly that'll be high on the list to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
So it makes sense that modernization could help with some of these problems.
Oh,
but-
for sure,
But,
for
but
sure.
in the meantime, would it be possible to have some procedure in place by which if there is a power outage, somebody just goes and checks the equipment? Just kind of like a procedure where immediately if there's a power outage known.
Right. And that's going to happen because now you can't trust it.
Right.
You know, the system had been working and now you don't know. And the proof happened when they came to work early. I think they start work at 6 a.m. out there, and they came to work, and the two ponds, when you first drive in to the main plant on Osage Lane down there, were overflowing literally.
Mr. Alligood, when's the next meeting?
The MSA next meeting is the fourth Tuesday of this month. So that'll be
25th,
that'll be a week on Tuesday in this room,
Tuesday, the 25th. Very good.
At what time?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
End of the report.
Thank you, sir. For my report, I have a couple of items. Number one, wanted to bring to your attention, reminder that we have our closed session this evening. One of the items is the VDOT property. Because of scheduling and some vacations, I indicated at our last meeting that we would be considering the echelon contract at our August 3rd meeting. But again, because of conflicts with schedules, that's going to be bumped to September. We're still going to meet in closed session, discuss, but I do not expect consideration for that contract to come to council before September. It'll be the anticipated the first meeting in September. If that changes, I'll let you know. Second item, as we all learned in the News Gazette, after 25 years, the Southern Inn is winding down its operations on a day-to-day basis. And just wanted to offer my appreciation and thank you to Sue Ann and George for the great meals, the great times, and the great memories. And during their tenure of lighting the sign of the Southern Inn and lighting downtown Main Street. I'm not sure what the next chapter will be entirely, but I know they still have control of the space. It's obviously owned by the Maharis, as was also indicated. The real estate is owned by the Maharis family, but the Hugies have responsibility for that operation of that business, and wish them best wishes in their next chapter. I also want to recognize George for his good work, and he was the main driver behind the Freedom Food Festival that you commented on earlier, Nick, of being so successful again, even hugely successful before COVID, took a couple of years off and back and somewhat better than ever. So I know, anticipate that he will stay involved with that event as we move into future years. And then talk about things happening. There are some scary things happening as we sleep with the water plant. There are also some great things going on in our community that we're not always aware of. And there's a college orientation workshop that most people aren't aware of that happens, it's been happening for, I think, about 20 years, maybe a little longer at VMI. The CAL program, as it's called, was first the brainchild of Gene Williams, who still spearheads it. Chad Joyce also supports in the efforts related to that. And I had the privilege of joining the class earlier this week to offer some insights on concept of investing and money management, which my daytime job is. And some of the things that I shared with the students, I wanted to share with you all on the lighter side of things, as we discussed current topics and fun stuff, but wanted to shine a light on the CAL program. But one of the things that I shared with them as all being high school students and having access to their high school internet, it was reported in TechCrunch, June 29th in 2023, to remedy a cybersecurity mistake, an Illinois high school reset students' passwords to "change me!" and told all the students to change their passwords. Parents and students were furious when they realized, much quicker than the administration, they can now log into any student's account and make the change. So since they all had the same password. The other thing that I shared with the students who were working with, I mentioned Gene and Chad and other professionals at VMI, was the concept of don't hack off old people. The older us old people get, the less likely life in prison is a deterrent. And they found that very, very enlightening and humorous. And then talking about economic development, shared with them that last year in 2022, there were 13,000 weddings in the United States that cost over $1 million. I checked with a couple people locally, and I'm not aware that any of them were in Rockbridge County, but that's roughly 250 $1 million weddings a weekend in the United States. So love is rich. And that, interestingly, is reported by Numlock News. If you haven't looked it up, it's an interesting thing. That was the June 21 publication. And then lastly, I had a couple of appointments that I wanted to bring for council's consideration. We have 2 spots that will be opening up August 1st on the Planning Commission. And haven't done this in the past, but as I was preparing, felt compelled to bring forward a reminder to council and to the prospective appointees, exactly the business of the Planning Commission. And as stated on our website, the primary function of the Planning Commission is to advise City Council in matters related to land use planning and development. The commission is responsible for reviewing and making recommendations to City Council concerning proposed subdivisions of land, site plans for proposed construction, conditional use permit or conditional use applications rather, requests for rezoning, design review for building modifications, signs, and landscaping in the city's entrance corridors. And lastly, the commission is also responsible for preparing and maintaining the comprehensive plan. And with that, we had 4 applications for appointment to the Planning Commission. And I wanted to bring forward individually, first the name of John Eastwood for appointment effective 8/1/2023 with an expiration for a 4-year term of July 31st, 2027. And I would ask for council's consideration.
I move to appoint John Eastwood to the Planning Commission for the term specified.
Second.
I have a motion, and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. For the same term, 8/1/2023 through 7/31/2027, 4-year term, for the name of Mary Stewart Harlow, and would ask for council's consideration.
Could I ask a point of clarification? Are
Sir.
all 4 of those, are the other 2 applications still active? Are those, if that makes sense, has anybody withdrawn an application?
No one's withdrawn an application. That is correct. But to your point, in contacting Alexander Timmons about his position, he said he was primarily interested in the Board of Zoning Appeals, which I plan to bring subsequent to the Planning Commission. But he was one of the 4 applicants.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I move to appoint Mary Stewart Harlow to the term specified, to the Planning Commission for the term specified.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Again, motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. And similarly, as I indicated, the Board of Zoning Appeals considers applications for variances from the zoning ordinance, as well as appeals pertaining to the administration of the zoning ordinance. The 5 members are appointed by the judge of the circuit court, and the director of the Planning and Development Department, as the city's zoning administrator, is the secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals. And we have 1 position that's vacant, and would like council's consideration for Alexander Timmons for immediate appointment to expire June 30 of 2024.
Move to approve Alexander Timmons to the Board of Zoning Appeals effective immediately with an expiration date of this term, June 30 of 2024.
Right. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. City Attorney.
I was only going to point out that his name will be submitted to the circuit court judge like you indicated for final approval.
Correct. Very good. Thank you for that clarification. Hearing no questions, roll call vote. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very, very much. Let me check my notes. I think that's all I had to antagonize you with this evening, and I'd like to call on City Manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think many of you might have seen, or perhaps not, that the bids came in for the Rock Ridge High School Technical Center. They were at 14, low bid was $14,217,696, considerably more than was anticipated. Our share of that is 17.23%, which is $2,133,009. So my plan is to go ahead and borrow that money. The county's going to finance their share, so we will go ahead and finance our share as well, unless there's any opposition from city council. We discussed this in the past with the interest we're earning now. They're anticipating somewhere between 4.5 and 4.75% interest. Of course, they would issue the bonds in October, so can't guarantee that. But given that interest earnings are better than that, I would advise and plan to, unless you object, to go along with Rockbridge and borrow that money.
The email we received just a couple of days ago said we owed 15.59%. How often do we recalculate the percent on what we owe on a capital project? Because that was from our
Annually.
superintendent just a week ago.
Yeah.
And
It should be from last year's numbers.
15.5, but now it's 17.23. That's, I just,
Yeah, your point is well taken, and I would say it is evaluated each year based upon our population at the high school percentage. So it is what it is. I read the same email. I'm not sure what number Jim's working with, but it's a stated number.
yeah, that's what I thought. I just so that we know the right number. It's just really important when you're dealing in the millions of dollars.
Jen's away at additional training to get even smarter. But I know she knows that number.
Great.
So.
Well, and I'll check that myself. Maybe the 1% is the school year just ended. And based on enrollment figures for next year, we would probably change that number potentially.
Could I ask a clarification question? I think there's a figure of like 839,000 or something like I don't know. It was
Yeah.
What was that?
So the state gave us in the first year of this 2-year budget, they gave us 1.2 and change for school construction. Amazing, fantastic. And we could use that to put toward this project at the high school. And then if we did, we would need to then still come up with that 800 and change to meet our obligation of 2 million and change for this project. And so that's what that email was kind of walking us through. And of course, as we have known for months, but just finally have received official notification, is that the county received $2.4 million from the state for this particular project. So when the bids came in at $14.8 million, and we know they're going to be obviously more than that, so at least 15.2, 15.5 million, you can take 2.4 off of that because the state is giving us that, and then our percentage is off of that remainder.
Okay.
We've got 1.2 in the bank from the state for school construction. You're recommending borrowing, the whole 2 million, but if we didn't borrow, we've got the 1.2, and we then have to release $800,000 from what the school has put aside for construction, our own school system, or from our general fund balance that we could do and not borrow anything.
And is there a time limit on when we have to spend that 1.2 million?
There is not, and it can be used for debt service.
Right.
So it's not, it doesn't have to be for direct construction.
Okay.
So it would serve to be used for this debt.
Sounds good.
We also are looking at a contingency. Apparently the county bids didn't end up exactly like they'd hoped. No contingency was put in the request. Now, obviously, there's going to be a contingency in many cases on these types of projects. So what we're recommending is an 8% contingency. Usually it's 10%. And we would have a cash contingency so that it wouldn't be part of the bid. And then we would only release that money, both Rockbridge County and the city, if it was needed. But it would not be initially a part of the bid or expected to be available. And our share of that, again, based on that 17.23% would be $194,322 if the contingency or some portion of it was needed. So
Would that be financed or not?
Assuming it would be cash, we wouldn't have financed it because we don't want them to spend it. We don't want the contractor or any other party to say, oh gosh, there's another, $1
million,
$1.1 million and as contingency, and it'll be spent.
Oh, it'll be spent.
Anyway, doing the best we can. So I hear no objections. So I'm going to proceed, work with Jen, our finance director, and get that. Well, the county will finance it. We'll just get our portion of the bill. Update on another big project, our DSS or Human Services project, the new building, which the city purchased with the land for, and working with Rockbridge and Buena Vista. The committee that's been guiding that behind the scenes is going to meet on the 2nd of August and review our progress and where we stand to date. Very recently, we've had some very positive conversations with the Department of General Services, who negotiates the lease and handles those types of contracts for lease and purchasing for the health department and the Office of Drinking Water, I should say. And again, while these have been positive developments in the last couple of months, we're getting down to the point now where we've got to make a decision to pull the trigger in order to get even close to having that building constructed before the lease runs out for DSS. So they're going to meet on the 2nd of August and discuss what the next steps should be. And then everyone will be advised, you would be advised. Board of Supervisors and the city council in BV would be advised as well, where we intend to go from there. So. In the fire department, there was recently, of course, several storms as worth noted, and the department responded to 5 down wire calls or down tree calls on the 13th when one of the storms swept through. You might recall that we've ordered 2 new SUVs and been waiting for months. One of them is in and it's being upfitted with the communications and other technology equipment that we need in the department. The other one's still waiting for delivery. The department was involved in a swift water rescue in Glasgow recently, and it was complicated by the fact the individual in the water was also bitten by a snake. So bad day for that individual. The department personnel worked on response scenarios in the soon to be demolished Baker Hall at Washington and Lee. And the scenarios of attack included using hose and ground ladders, the new Tower 9, and other equipment in those types of larger commercial buildings that you would fight from time to time. Both the police department and fire department responded to a tractor trailer accident on Morningside Drive that tore down some wires. And you might recall, I think most of the city was out of power that day. So luckily it came back up very quickly, but both departments were there on scene. Police department updates, our cadets, Nicely and Sturm, I should say, have been assigned to ride patrol with different officers as they train and become familiar with law enforcement in our community. And our new hires, Baker, Clark, and Barron, our officers are working through field training, and our new recruit Stewart is moving through the police academy at this time. So we're in pretty good shape for the first time in about 3 years as far as having our positions filled. Some are in training, but they're very soon to be on the street. Public Works reported that the AC unit at the Miller's House Museum was also struck by lightning and will need to be replaced. And that's going to cost somewhere between $3,500 and $4,500. Not a fortune, but not chump change. And like everything else these days, unfortunately, the delivery of the parts will be delayed, and we don't know how long at this point. We're working with the Miller's House Museum board to just try and be sure that people aren't showing up on a Saturday afternoon. It's 98 degrees in the Miller's House Museum. So we'll keep in contact. City Hall renovation planning, a second meeting with staff will occur next week as we review the recommendations, that initial recommendations coming from the architect as to what we should be looking for in City Hall to serve the needs of the community over the next several decades. So that's the end of my report, Mr. Mayor. City Council, if you have any questions, happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions from council? Hearing none.
Yes, we just, approved our FY24 budget, just a handful of months ago. And in that was $1.2 million for the high school. Now it's roughly 2 million, or give or take maybe 2.1. So, and just pointing out, we've got future high school projects in there, millions of dollars, next year, a new basketball gym, and just millions and millions of dollars at the high school. You had talked, and of course we're going to owe for the social services. We're going to owe millions for the jail. We're going to owe millions for the MSA, and we'd love to do City Hall, so we've just got, millions. You talked about a study on debt. What's the status of that to understand how we can approach this, and if we have the capacity, recognizing in 2026, 2027, that the Lilburn Downing 600 and change debt that we pay annually kind of falls off the books. But as we think about, paying off the Horse Center's debt, we have our own debt on 9 figures worth of projects potentially.
Well, it's really a financial planning tool that we're developing with Davenport that does take into account what we foresee in the next to 10, 15 years regarding debt. Looking at, what type of taxes might be needed in that period of time to support some of that debt, what we could do with cash to manage our cash to take the sharp edges off of that debt when it goes up, or the taxes go up, if you will, to support that debt. So that's what you will see. And I believe we'll be bringing to you a report in August from Davenport with city staff to go over that in some detail. I'm pretty pleased. I think it's a good tool that will be very helpful to you and to other city councils in the future.
Thank you. Thanks.
Very good. Next, city attorney, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I chimed in on the BZA appointment because in different jurisdictions where I work, it's handled differently, and often we have to file pleadings in an order. I'll check with Arnie and see if that's what happens here or not, but we'll make sure it gets taken care of. That's
excellent.
Why I interrupted. I apologize. As Leslie mentioned, and I think as I mentioned at the last city council meeting, I was wrapping up my analysis of the planning commission and the conflict issue with regard to the site plan at Washington and Lee. I did complete that analysis, obviously, and circulated a memo. I don't know that it has been distributed to everybody on city council. I will make sure that it is. The tops of the waves analysis was with regard to a site plan, which is a specific zoning act. It is a ministerial act that determines whether a proposed site plan on a piece of property conforms to the zoning ordinance. With regard to a site plan analysis brought by Washington and Lee with regard to a Washington and Lee parcel, the action of the planning commission, and the same rule would apply here with city council, the ultimate action of city council with regard to that site plan would, quote, apply solely to, end quote, Washington and Lee or the property. And because of that, it was my opinion that the members of the planning commission who had a personal interest, and you'll recall from our discussions long ago, not all personal interests require a recusal. But in this circumstance, it was my opinion that this type of personal interest did require recusal because it applied solely to Washington and Lee and its property. Again, I'll make sure that memo gets circulated to everyone. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. It's a not a lengthy memo, but there's a fair amount of detail and reasoning in it that I'd like you to take a look at if you do have any questions about it. That's the only issue I really wanted to bring up. There is one other item that I asked Ms. Alexander to put into her closed meeting motion that I'd like to address with council very briefly in closed meeting. Beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Hey, members of council have questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Jeremy, and appreciate your thoughtful analysis and guidance as we navigate business with our neighbors. Next item is new business, consideration of a resolution reaffirming the participation of the city of Lexington in a regional program to serve vulnerable youths. Mr.
Thank you,
City
Mr.
Manager.
Mayor. As noted, this is a program we've been participating in for many, many years through the Virginia Juvenile Community Crime Control Act, through the Department of Juvenile Justice. The localities that we partner with are Botetourt, Allegheny, and Rockbridge counties, and the city of Covington, the city of Buena Vista. So it's a regional program. There are revenues provided by the state that fund this program. Some of the communities have to make a match. We do not. For many years, the city of Lexington actually managed this program. Recently, we pushed back a little bit and said, somebody else should be managing it of our 6 localities, and the Department of Juvenile Justice actually took over the management of the program. And they will then put in place, or are putting in place, the different activities that are used to help these individual young people who do have, are challenged because of their activities and might end up in the legal system. So this resolution just reaffirms that we are participating in this program. It does not commit to the city, to any cost to the city. We are still serving as a fiscal agent, and that's not a problem for us at all. So I would obviously recommend that city council approve this resolution as provided to you.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions for the city manager? Hearing none, I would ask for council's consideration of the recommendation from the city manager.
Move to approve the resolution reaffirming the participation of City of Lexington in a regional program to serve vulnerable youths.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Betts.
Aye. I thought you were asking if I had a question. I
Fair enough.
Yes.
Ms. Strong.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and hope for positive progress with that program. Next item is appointment of representative to the Shenandoah Valley Partnership Board. Unless there's anyone here that objects to Jim serving and representing the city, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Mr. Mayor, I might add, if anybody's interested, I'll step aside as well. So,
I will, unless there's an objection, we'll continue to have the city manager serve in that capacity. And hearing no opposition, that is approved for the city manager to be our representative. Thank you, Jim, for supporting that effort and representing our area. Next item on the agenda is the closed meeting. We have a few items, and as before Ms. Alexander reads us into that, I want to personally thank her for taking care of the meeting regarding the Horse Center's request, and also alert anyone, don't anticipate that we'll be making any, having any votes after. We will just simply be coming back into open session and closing the meeting. And with that, Ms. Alexander.
I move that Lexington City Council convene in a closed meeting pursuant to section 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing the disposition of publicly held real property located at 626 Waddell Street, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the city's bargaining position or negotiating strategy, and pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing the annual performance status of city personnel. Pursuant to section 2.2-3711A8 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel.
Second.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second. Roll call. Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Sigler.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
And I vote aye. We are now going into closed session. Thank you.
The cameras are off because I just yawned.
Hold on, hold on.